What's up YouTube? Welcome back to another video. My name is Isaiah Rivera and I am a professional dunker who has taken my vertical from 24 inches when I first started training all the way to an officially recorded 50.5 inches. Today we're going to be going over my top 5 favorite plyometric exercises that you can use to add inches to your vertical. But before we get into those exercises, first I'm going to explain what plyometrics even are and how it is exactly that they work. The objective of plyometrics is to increase power production. Power is force times velocity, and being able to apply a lot of force very quickly is literally what jumping high and running faster is all about. Physiologically, the two things that plyometrics trains is the stretch shortening cycle and eccentric muscle contractions. Eccentric muscle contractions are when the muscle lengthens under tension and they have the greatest power and force capabilities out of any of the muscle contractions. The second thing that plyometrics trains is the stretch shortening cycle, which is the cyclic loading and unloading of the musculotendinous unit, which is just a fancy term for your muscles and tendons. Together, eccentric muscle contractions and the stretch shortening cycle augment force production. Now this is huge because this is literally where the secret of athleticism lies. It's the reason why guys like John Morant jump so freaking high. This is how you tap into your strength levels and just add rocket boosters to your vertical. Literally the whole point of plyometrics is to train those systems and make them more efficient so that you can jump higher. Now some disclaimers before we get into the exercises. Plyometrics are not a standalone exercise. They have to be used in conjunction with other training methods and periodized correctly in order to reap the most benefits. You also have to train first. Now, what does training to train mean? When you see me post these workout videos and you see me do all these like heavy lifts, all I'm doing is preparing my body to handle this type of training, this more specific type of training that I do when I'm leading up to a competition or when I want to really peak my vertical. I am training to train. I'm training to handle those really intense training cycles. If you don't properly ramp up and build a good foundation of strength and fitness, you're not gonna improve as much and you're also gonna increase your chances of getting hurt. Also, today we're specifically talking about plyometrics. There are other things in the weight room that you can do to train the SNC and the eccentric muscle contractions, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Today, we're strictly talking about plyos. Without further ado, let's get into my top 5 favorite plyometric exercises. Coming in at number 5, we got single leg hopping. This is a very effective exercise, especially for 1-foot jumpers, and it is very, very intense. The difference between bounding and hopping is bounding, you're alternating from leg to leg. Hopping, you're staying on the same leg. I really like single leg hopping because it really helps with coordination. So it's good for 1-foot jumpers that are beginners. It kind of teaches you how to load your leg up properly. If you get really good at this, you have less chances of getting like a flat tire. I don't know if you've ever been in a basketball game on a fast break, going super fast, and you try to jump and you get a flat tire. That's because you're not eccentrically strong enough to handle those forces. Single leg hopping is gonna increase your eccentric strength because you're jumping and then you're landing on one leg. So the eccentric forces are higher than on a regular 1-foot jump. So you're gonna get very eccentrically strong and you're gonna be able to handle more speed going into a 1-foot jump as you get better at this. Now, coming in at number 4 in my favorite plyometric exercises are depth jumps. This is the big daddy of plyometrics. This is like what we train to train, right? This is the thing that you can eccentrically overload the most out of any plyos because the only thing you're limited by is the height of the box. And let's say you can't go off a high enough box, you can literally just jump off the box. Now, this is very intense because you have a ton of force that you're loading into your legs and then you're turning around that super fast, punching the ground, trying to go straight back up. The whole point of depth jumps is to decrease the ground contact time. There's also depth jumps that you can do where you stay in the ground a little bit longer and you purely focus on jumping higher, but that's kind of a midpoint, a segue into the lower ground contact time. Depth jumps, when you decrease the ground contact time, you're gonna experience way higher peak forces. Now, you have to be very careful with depth jumps because they will destroy your CNS. During a cycle of very intense depth jumps, I would expect your vertical to just plummet. It takes a long time to recover from, so use this very, very carefully. Coming in at number 3 in the plyometric exercises that I like are sprints. Now, for some reason, a lot of people don't see sprinting as plyometrics, but remember, a plyometric, all we're doing is training eccentric muscle contractions and the stretch shortening cycle. Anytime there is a cyclic loading and unloading of your muscles, you are doing a plyometric. Now, there's different types of plyometrics. There's extensive plyos and intensive plyos. Extensive plyos can literally be something like a warm-up, a dynamic warm-up. When you see me do those high intensity warm-ups where I'm doing like 200-meter skips, things like side shuffles, that type of thing, those are extensive plyos. I'm technically doing plyometrics in my warm-up before every single training session. It's just not what people traditionally think of plyos, which is the intensive plyos, things like depth jumps and bounding and hopping. Now, sprinting is on the far end of the force velocity curve. It is the lowest ground contact time activity that you can do. And what's cool about sprinting, it is very safe for jumpers to do specifically because you're not in a lot of knee flexions. So you're not loading up the patella super crazily. So you can do it pretty frequently without getting hurt. The only downside is guys that have a propensity to strain their hamstrings or pull their hamstrings. It can be pretty risky, so I would be very careful about building up to it, making sure you're super warm before you get into it. Sprinting is something that during times where I've had like knee injuries and that type of thing, it has allowed me to maintain my vertical, keep it super high, even while not jumping a lot, just sprinting 3 times a week. And I was able to maintain my vertical super well. And it's also good for body composition. It keeps you in shape. It's also really fun. So this is why sprinting is one of my favorite plyometric exercises. Coming in at number 2 for my favorite plyos are loaded jumps. Now, loaded jumps is more of a power exercise. It's something that I would use earlier on in my training. It's not super specific, especially for 1-foot jumpers. But the reason I like it is because it's more specific to 2-foot jumpers. So I've seen my vertical climb up a lot during periods of time where I've been doing a lot of loaded jumps. The difference between something like this and a more traditional plyo is you're not loading up the eccentric as much. It's more concentrically dominant. Something like a hex bar jump, for example, you're starting at the bottom and then you're just loading that up. That's purely concentric. That's not a traditional plyometric, but you can change the hex bar so you start at the top, load it, and then come back up. That would be more of a traditional plyometric, more of a strength speed exercise instead of speed strength. That's another reason I like them, is because there's so many variations for loaded jumps that you can do. So further down the year, you can do lighter weights. Earlier on in the year, you can do it more concentrically, right? Not add a stretch shortening cycle to it. Just do the concentric portion and just focus on intent. It can be super effective for developing power. Now, my number 1 plyometric exercise, and not just my number 1, what I feel like is the best plyometric exercise that you can do is max approach, max effort jumping. One of the most important training principles out there is the law of specificity. If you want to get better at something, you need to do that thing more. If you want to get better at 2-foot jumping, you need a 2-foot jump more. If you want to get better at 1-foot jumping, you need a 1-foot jump more. This is the most intense plyometric that you can do, the most specific plyometric that you can do. It's just jumping a lot at max effort, max approach. This is also going to help with your technique if you do it more. And I'm going to fill you guys in on a little secret. The top jumpers, the top dunkers specifically in the world, did not do a lot of traditional plyometric. What they did more than anybody else is take more max approach jumps than anybody else. If you could put it on a graph and look at someone's vertical compared to how many jumps, max approach jumps they took in their life, it would be a direct correlation, all right? So especially for my beginners out there, the guys that are just getting into jump training for the first time, the best thing that you can do is just go have jump sessions. Jump as much as you can, but it needs to be at a max approach and it needs to be at max intent, max effort. Reaching as high as you can, jumping as high as you can. This is the thing that's gonna move the needle the most as far as how much vertical you can gain. All right, guys, so those are my top 5 plyometric exercises. Like I said earlier, it is very important that you do this in a plan and you periodize it correctly. If you need help doing that, go to THPstrength.com. Me and John Evans will help you write a completely customized program for you. Go to THPstrength.com, check it out. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. Also drop a comment. I get to all the comments on these training videos for the first like 1 to 2 days. So leave a comment, let's start some good discussions. Subscribe if you haven't, guys, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.